Hi everybody, Jim Graham here for Beyond the Cage, streaming live on the MMA World Facebook page once again. On this week's show, a lot of stuff to cover once again, as is a jam-packed weekend that was combat sports, and heading into another jam-packed weekend for combat sports here as we are winding down 2017. Once again, my name is Jim Graham, your host here at MMA World. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. It's just my name, Jimgramm. My co-host Kayla Beatty will be joining me shortly to cover a host of topics ranging from the UFC to Bellator to Glory Kickboxing, Bellator Kickboxing as well. Of course, this weekend, huge UFC on Fox event over in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Super excited for that event. 12 fights are heading over to Winnipeg. Super excited for that. We're going to pick the fights for that. We're also going to recap UFC Fresno from this past weekend. We're also going to talk about, like I said, Bellator Kickboxing, more UFC topics, maybe what Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, all that stuff that is going on in the news as well. Also, some big matchups has been named for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, including a heavyweight title bout as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to tell us how we're doing, you want to tell us how bad we're doing, whatever you want to do, please comment below, and we'll get to them as the show progresses. We're going to shoot for about an hour and a half, and we're going to do our best to get to those questions and comments as soon as we can. So I'm going to invite my co-host Kayla Beatty on another Beyond the Cage here on the MMA World Facebook page, and thank you for everybody for tuning in once again this week. All right, how you doing, Kayla?
Hey, Jim. Hey, guys. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. I know you were in California, so
Yeah.
I was debating whether to ask you how warm it is there or not, but I'm going to take it. How warm right now is it in California where you are at?
Well, it is the morning, so it's 9 a.m., so it's not super hot, but yeah, we're having some really weird winter weather. It's been in the high 80s like all week.
Ugh.
I don't know if maybe there's, we have those fires going on, or they were going on, so I don't know if that affected it somehow, but it's definitely not a white Christmas. How's the weather out there?
In Michigan, well, pretty much the whole state got snow, but specifically here in the Detroit area, we got about 8 inches yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Snow, and I think it is currently a crisp 16 degrees, and with the wind chill, it is 3. So that's
some of the Cali heat.
So that is what we're dealing with here in Michigan. So I'm glad. I mean, fires are not great, but I'm glad it's nice and 80 where you're at. So as I was telling everyone, Kayla, we're going to talk a lot of stuff to talk about. Once again, we have UFC Fresno to talk about. We have Bellator 190 as well as Bellator Kickboxing 8. And then, of course, this weekend is Bellator 191. Also, Glory Redemption / Glory 49 was this past weekend in the Netherlands. And then, of course, we're going to end the show with our picks for UFC Winnipeg, the 4 fights being shown on Fox television here in the United States. I think it's something different in Canada or wherever you may be viewing in, but at least for here in the U.S., it is UFC on Fox. 20, what are they at, like 28 now, I think?
Yeah.
I forget track on how many UFC on Fox is, but yeah. So, hey, I'm going to move this, if I can move this curtain here. There we go. It was kind of blinding me a little bit. All right. Even though it is clear, it is sunny. Yeah. All right. So let's start off with UFC Fresno. Great night of fights, I thought, overall, for the 13 night of fights. Just your overall impression of the card before we kind of get to the main card and kind of break down some of those fights, Kayla.
Yeah, I thought the card was great. I feel like every weekend we're getting either another fight of the night, or fight of the year candidate, or knockout of the year. So, but yeah, I think that what's great about these fight nights, or free fights on Fight Pass, on Fox, I just feel like some of them are sleepers. These guys know that they aren't necessarily on a pay-per-view, but they still have a chance to, break the headlines and give us great performances. So I was really impressed by the card. What did you think?
I thought it was really good, really from start to finish, if I'm being honest. And I think it started with, I thought, a pretty good performance by Trevin Giles over Antonio Neto. who, again, I know Neto was coming back after a few years away from a sport, but a guy that is a very accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And Trevor Giles was able to shut him down and show off some really good boxing. And for a division that I think is just starting to kind of get back to being really competitive and being one of the best divisions in the UFC, that being the middleweight division, seeing a young guy like Trevin Giles really excites me. We got to see another young gentleman we'll get to on the main card, and Eric Anders perform as well. So the middleweight division, I think at one time, mainly because of the Anderson Silva effect, was, you could make a case, was one of the weaker divisions in the UFC just because Anderson Silva had run through. But now, as we're exiting the Silva era, we are getting a lot of talented middleweights, and I think we're getting a lot of great competition. I think, as noted by the pending title fight coming up in February with Luke Rockhold against Robert Whittaker. So right now, the middleweight division is very strong. We have young guys like Trevin Giles and Eric Anders coming up through these ranks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always, and that's what's great about these cards too, is, you know, they usually do showcase a couple, if not a few more, you know, up and coming fighters that they see potential just to come in there and start rocking those divisions. So yeah, definitely exciting.
The only fight I thought was kind of bad was the Alejandro Perez and the early Alcantara fight. That one was not particularly great. Which saw Perez get the win over Alcantara. That was really the only fight I was kind of like, wasn't that great. And then I know there was some buzz online over the Andre Sukumkath against Luke Saunders fight. Some people thought that it was kind of a quick stoppage by the referee.
Yes.
Who that was, the referee. It was Josh Rosenthal, who I do think Josh Rosenthal is a very excellent referee. I didn't think it was a bad stoppage, in my opinion. Looking at the way he fell down, follow-up punches, and he was in complete defensive mode. And it's still one of those situations, kind of like we were talking about with UFC 218, Kayla, when Sabah Hamasi fell. When the guy's head's facing the mat, it's really hard to tell what his composure looks like, what his eyes are. You know, it's really hard to tell, so you have to err on the side of safety. Now, with that being said, I didn't think it was egregious as when Herb stopped the Hamasi fight, but I think this was a solid stoppage. Luke Sanders may be upset, but he was in a very bad spot. Let's not get that mistaken.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like you said, the way that he fell and the way that his body, I mean, it's not necessarily that he like stiffened up or anything, but comparing those two, it was very different. And I think, like you said, though he popped up pretty quick, it was more in defensive mode. I think if you saw the look on his face, you see how, you know, commentators or people just in the MMA community were talking after the fight. Most people agree that that was, you know, a fair stoppage. But it was a little unfortunate that we didn't get a longer fight out of the two.
Yeah, and for Sukumkamp, this is a very nice bounce back when a lot of people were very critical of him after his last fight, where he kind of was showboating a little bit. And a lot of people thought that was one of the reasons why he didn't get the win in that decision in his last fight. So this time around, the fact that he was able to go in there and get the job done, I think speaks volumes to this gentleman's maturity. And so I think he'll learn from that experience, knowing I got to just put people away. I can't worry. Making it a show is great. It's great for us, the fans. But at the end of the day, getting the win is what gets you notice and moving up money and rankings and sponsorship and all that stuff. So I think he kind of realized, like, I just got to go in there and win. And even though the first round was a little shaky for him, he bounced back in the second round and was able to get that finish. Yeah,
definitely. I like the showboating, but more outside of the octagon. I just want to see the skills in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your Cody Garbrandt. He did it very well.
Yeah, I mean that. I was upset about the Cody Garbrandt, but at least in Cody's defense, Dominic Cruz, other than the Uriah Faber fight, had never been finished. Obviously, had never lost. So I think he was going to be a tough guy to put away. And obviously, the animosity between those two, Dominic Cruz versus Team Alpha Male, take your pick on, you know, which fighter he has faced over the years. So I kind of get that a little more than Andre Sukumkamp against, you know, insert random fighter. Yeah.
Right. Hey, Tony Clark, thank you for saying have a good show.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tony. Also, I did want to make a correction. This was from like 2 weeks ago. You had said there was a tie between Detroit and Jose Aldo with the title. So I found that out. So what it was, apparently, when they were doing the press conference for UFC 123, like 6-7 years ago, the last time the UFC was in Detroit before 218, that was also the press conference to announce that Jose Aldo had been named the first ever UFC featherweight champion. So that was the first time he got the belt, was at the press conference here in Detroit for that event. So even though it was, so that was the tie.
Okay, yeah, I'm so glad you found that because I was driving yesterday and I'm like, man, I still can't find what he was talking about. He had said that was the first time a belt was put around his waist, but that makes so much sense. So thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know you were completely right. I was, some friends were commenting about the video or something, and I kind of saw someone, and I did a little digging. I was like, oh, okay, that's what he was talking about. So it was a press conference, not an actual physical fight event. And it's crazy. I didn't even know that happened here in Detroit. You would think like such a big announcement would have just happened in Vegas. So it's so kind of weird that it happened here. Before we get to the main card, real quick, what did you think about the fight between Alexis Davis and Liz Carmouche? Obviously a very close fight, a very good fight. I actually think it should have gotten a performance of the night bonus. It didn't. But what did you think about that bout, and did you think the judges got it right in giving the Canadian Alexis Davis the nod there?
Yeah, like you said, it was very close, and I think both ladies performed really well. I think I agree with the judges. I'm trying, I should have watched it. I watched it a couple days ago again. Yeah, I just think it was very close, but I think Davis kind of inched a little bit to get more of that win. Let me see here. What did you think of the fight?
I thought it was very close, but I think the judges got it right, because if you really look at who was closer to winning this fight, it was for sure Alexis Davis, especially with those submissions. Now, Liz Carmouche, I think, probably won the first round, I think, with the overall control, even though there was a close armbar there. But I think rounds 2 and 3, I think Alexis Davis really took over. And I'm not sure what rank Alexis Davis is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not sure if she is a black belt. I know Liz Carmouche is. She trains with the folks down there, the 10th Planet Freaks in San Diego, with the Martinez brothers, Alilia McFarland, who was actually in her corner for that fight. So I know she's a very accomplished Jiu-Jitsu player. So for her to kind of get out Jiu-Jitsu, so to speak, I think was incredible, number one. And number two, I think even though she lost, I think 125, kind of spinning off 125, I also do think suits both ladies a lot better than 135. And even though they already had matched up in this fight, I still think both are factors in this brand new division for the female flyweights.
Yeah, and that's what's really exciting is we're starting to see some of these ladies move to that division and see them, like you're saying, compete a lot better at a more comfortable weight. I'm really excited about the flyweight division in Bellator, in UFC, and just to see who kind of goes down there. We have a few fights that have already been announced too with both promotions, and it's just going to be nice to see these ladies compete at their natural weight and at their best.
The funniest thing.
How many? I'm trying to remember that fight. How many times did she get her on the ground? There was a couple of submission.
Let's see. I have the fight. I'm going to pull up the fight metric stats here for this fight. Okay, so in terms of landed strikes, Alexis Davis was 132 of 182. Liz Carmouche was 191 of 215. Liz Carmouche was also successful on all 4 of her takedown attempts, 4 for 4. Davis just being 1 of 3. They only credit her with 2 official submission attempts, which I think she had 3 or 4 actually. But I think those submission attempts, even though she did outstrike Davis by 60 strikes, I think those submission attempts were so close, and they were closer to ending from any of the strikes that Carmouche was throwing. I think that, to me, gets the nod. I think that gets the nod for me, because that's one of the criteria, I think, in judging is who's closer damage, submission, getting close to finishing that fight. And I think it's no doubt it was Alexis Davis that night.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, let's get to the main card, where I went a stellar 5-1, if you go back to the picks last week. So very excited.
Congrats on that.
So we started with Benito Lopez against Albert Morales. We said, Kayla, this was going to be an excellent fight between two up-and-coming guys, two guys that I guess were supposed to fight in the regional circuit there in California. Yeah. Never materialized. Happened here in the UFC, which is super cool. The first round, my goodness, was that first round insane. Here's some of the numbers just for the first round. Albert Morales was 46 of 83. As he was able to really blitz Benito Lopez, who was only 12 of 27, if you want to talk about that. So Morales definitely winning that first round. Then rounds 2 and 3, I think both guys, after that initial burst and damage, you could tell slowed down. Not that it was awful or super boring, but you could tell both guys slowed down, at least in the ferocity. If you look at actual thrown strikes, they both threw 82 for Morales and 83 for Benavidez in round 2. So they were still throwing, just not quite with that same passion. Lopez slight edge and landed strikes 34-29. And then once again, a super close round 3. Once again, only one strike separated the two. 34 landed for Morales, 33 for Benavidez. I actually thought Morales was going to get the victory in this one. I thought he had won rounds 1 and rounds 3. I would have gave Lopez round 2. Judges ended up scoring this one for Benito Lopez, which did kind of surprise me a bit, especially the unanimous decision. I thought with this being so close, we probably would have seen a split. Didn't go that way. And I think Lopez even looked a little surprised after the fight that he got the win too. What did you think about this one, Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, it just got me so excited. Again, like we're saying, these young guys coming in and obviously wanting to put on a good show and like you said, having the passion there. Super close, like you're saying, as far as strikes and just trading shots and really going for it. I think that it's good that you mentioned, in the second round, we definitely did see how, maybe it's a matter of inexperience and conditioning that they still have to work on because they had slowed down after just giving us such an exciting first round. But I don't know. I didn't really disagree with the decision because I kind of felt like there was just a little bit more damage done slightly or more power. Maybe this is what's going to be great about, these sensors in the gloves. Maybe we'll get down to, depending on what information they're going to share with us, but I guess the power behind some of these strikes, maybe that can kind of help us determine where the judges are coming from or how certain fights are judged. But overall, I thought both of them performed well. Again, you can almost say, I don't know if I want to say fight of the night candidate, but one that's it showed both guys' skills and showed that they're exciting new fighters, for the division.
All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening, which was an absolutely dominating performance by Eric Anders as he took on short notice replacement Marcus Perez. And one thing that stood out to me in this fight was the announcers were kind of saying, Marcus Perez says, oh, this is just another fight. It doesn't matter that it's short notice. That comment kind of struck me as odd, number one. And then number two, his antics in the ring, kind of smiling, dancing around. And I understand you got to have fun in there sometimes, but I feel like certain guys you can't do that against, and Eric Anders is one of those guys you can't do that against. This guy is an absolute monster, and you're like, dancing around, and it's just like, dude, this guy's coming for you, man. Like, you gotta kind of like, I'm not saying don't have fun, but I think you got to read the room, Yeah. I don't think Marcus Perez was reading the room. I think because of the short notice nature fighting in the UFC, it seemed to me that he was just kind of happy to be there. And where Eric Anders is like, I got to get this win. I think there was just so much difference in mentality that kind of was like, I don't see Anders losing this. He had the right mentality for that night, not to mention his physical assets. And he just put a whooping on him. I mean, you outstrike someone 104-41 in landed strikes. You put a whooping on him, okay? That's plain and simple. And I know he didn't get the finish, but I think not getting the finish and still bringing that same level of intensity every single round. I mean, he had a 30-25 and a 30-26, and Marcos Rosales somehow had the audacity to score this 29-28. Are you kidding me? I don't know what he was drinking that night in Fresno. But my goodness, I thought that was clearly like 3 straight 10-8 rounds. You could have easily gave that for Mr. Anders, and I just thought that was a very dominant performance. And I think that we're talking about young up and coming middleweights. This is one of them right here, and I'm super excited to see this guy in the future because I actually think he is a star in the making. I know you get a lot of credit when you call stuff early, Kayla. I think here, December 14th, 2017, Eric Anders has championship potential.
Wow.
I'm saying right now, I think he can rise to that level. I think he has the tools, the potential, and the physical makeup, and you saw it on Saturday, the mentality to get to the top level. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he just had a better mental state and like you said, focus. And it's probably because he does have plans to get closer to that belt and is taking this serious. Who do you think, because now he's 2-0 in the UFC, who do you think he should fight next within his division to start getting closer to that title shot? Do you have someone in mind that you'd like to see him compete against next?
Yes, I would like to see. I would see Elias Theodorou, because I think Elias Theodorou is kind of that weird matchup with wrestling and kind of striking. He's kind of a bizarre guy. He can sometimes make fights boring. You may think, well, that's not a great matchup for an exciting, power puncher, but it is, because those are the type of guys you need to get by to see whether you're legit. If you can get by somebody like Elias Theodorou, so I actually think it's a big test for him, a guy that's really going to test his grappling. And I think so far, he took on. In his first fight, the jiu-jitsu guy, his name is escaping me here.
No.
I'll have to look it up. But
it was
he was able to knock him out. So, Rafael Natal. Obviously a very accomplished jiu-jitsu player. He was able to knock him out before he went to the ground. But I think that Elias Theodorou would be an excellent matchup. As far as like pure excitement, him against Thiago Santos would probably be really good. And the other one, I'm going to throw out Sam Alvey, just because Sam Alvey's a very entertaining fight no matter what. So I would say those three are what I would look for if I was Eric Anders.
Okay, cool. We do have a new comment. I don't know if we want to break away from this fight card, or if we want to finish up just going over the main card real quick. But
that's from Joe.
Yes, we have Joe here talking about some news or I guess rumors that are out. It says, just read that Mayweather has been offered a UFC fight deal. Do we think it will happen? Do we want it to happen?
Do I want it to happen?
Do we think it'll happen? Do we want it to
happen? I think it'll happen? Possibly, because he already did fight McGregor. So you have to say the possibility is there. Now, whether or not Now, the thing that leads me to not believe him is the fact he said this deal for these 4 fights would be worth $1 billion. They just bought the company for a grand total of $5 billion. They're not giving you one. That's the part that. And the thing is, after his first fight, which if it is McGregor and he gets destroyed, how well will those next 3 sell? To me, if it is a deal, it's one fight and one fight only. He's already what, 40 years old, 41 years old?
Yeah.
And he's now going to try to learn grappling and stuff. No, it's not going to go well for him. If he fights in the UFC, it's going to be for one fight. It's going to be a spectacle, and that's it. There's no chance for a multi-fight deal. So I think that's where he's lying, is saying it's a multi-fight deal. I think it'd be for one fight. And Joe commented, do you think I have? I'm going to say 45% that'll happen.
Man, well, I'm kind of curious, because wasn't the UFC talking, or Dana White was talking about how they were thinking about holding boxing events under the UFC banner? Do you think that his deal could be something with boxing, or do you think it's going to be MMA? I know that I read something they were playing around with ideas.
The only thing, he's the greatest boxer, though. I don't know. It's hard to say there's someone I would want to see him box. I feel like he's done everything in boxing. So, yeah, maybe that's a possibility. But then they got to create a separate entity. They got to do a Bellator thing. I don't know. I think they do so much with MMA, and I think they already cut a lot of people when this new company bought them out. I just don't think right now they have the manpower to do it and do it correctly the way they want to do it. So I think that's something in the future, but I think right now in the next year or two, I think that's just too big of an undertaking for a company that just spent a whole bunch of money, and they'd have to spend more money to kind of like promote this and get this division going. That's why I don't see that happening right now.
Joe, I have a quick question for you. If Floyd Mayweather got even one fight in the UFC, do you want to see him fight Conor, or who would you want? Like, who would be your perfect matchup for his MMA fight? It would have to be Conor, right?
I think for money's sake, it'd have to be.
Yeah.
Then we had a question for James Anthony. Who is your most improved fighter for 2017? James, it's too early yet. I haven't done my list for end of the year awards yet. Trying to catch me giving sneak peeks. So no sneak peeks yet, but thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well. But yeah, we're Kayla and I will be doing a award show in conjunction with MMA World, MMA UK. So don't try to jump the gun on that. I still got to think on that. I'm leaning towards a couple people, but I'm not giving it away just yet. All right, let's get with UFC Fresno. Let's see. We got the next fight of the evening was Scott Holtzman against Derek Horcher. Kind of as I think we both picked Scott Holtzman, I believe.
Yeah.
Kind of what I thought. I thought that Scott would kind of go back to his wrestling roots, really try to grind this out. You saw Horcher a couple times land that left hand. You could see Holtzman wanted none of that on the feet, really took it to the ground. I thought worked very well. I was a little upset. There were a couple times I thought Scott was working, throwing some punches, and the referee stood them up. I thought that was really odd. I thought that was a lot of quick. I think Scott, you could tell a couple times he might have said something. I don't know if it was caught in camera, but he said maybe a very colorful comment towards the referee. And I don't think they were justified, really. I think they stood him up like 3 times, and there was only one I was like, okay. But the other 2, you got to let guys work out of those situations. And if Horcher wasn't working himself out of those situations enough, then to me, you don't stand him up. You got to show kind of some effort there. And he was more or less not doing anything to get Holtzman off of him, in my opinion. And if it hadn't been for the referee, we probably wouldn't have seen almost any of those left hands connect, because I think Holtzman really dominated this fight.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think there was even a couple times in the Davis and Camacho fight that, I think those were a little bit more justified, but yeah, it was interesting how the refs were standing people up a little bit more in these fights. And I always wonder, because with these fight nights, I don't know if they're just trying to make them super exciting and make sure that there's action, but I feel like in this fight, like you're saying, Holtzman was dominating and I don't know, like give him a chance to show what he's got on the ground. Yes, he had the wrestling, but who knows if he was going to pull out some jits and some submission attempts. I think that they stood him up a little bit. I also agree, just a couple times too early. But really dominating performance, like you said. We know that Horcher has that heavy left hand, but why take that damage if you can get him on the ground and dominate? So a big win for him.
All right, next bout of the evening. I actually believe you took Sterling last week.
Oh, no, I did?
I think you did. I took Marlon Moraes. Not trying to glow. I'm just saying I thought Marlon would win. I actually didn't expect this, though.
Yeah.
At least this quickly. As this happened about a minute into the fight, Sterling, I looked like he was going for a takedown. I'm not quite sure. Moraes, said, he goes, well, I was just throwing a high kick. He kind of ducked down and it turned into a knee. He was kind of setting that up. And boy, it landed flush, and Sterling went down out cold. And this is the Marlon Moraes that people wanted to see when he was signed for World Series of Fighting. I think the guy we saw in the first 2 fights against John Dodson and Rafael Asunciao, though going 1-1 in those fights, was not quite the same guy. I think he did have a little bit of jitters in his system, and I think he just maybe wanted to perform so much that it actually was a negative thing. And I think this is the first time we really saw Moraes just kind of let it flow a little bit and really show off his talent. And this is a huge win. Obviously, he was 7, Sterling was 8 coming into this fight, so knocking him out in the first round. He now finishes the last 3 months of the year with 2 big wins over 2 people in the top 10 in the bantamweight division. I think he puts himself in a very good position to fight for the title in 2018, possibly one fight away. Jimmy Rivera, did he end up just getting canceled altogether for 219? I know he was supposed to take on Dominic Cruz. Do you remember if he got a replacement?
I think he got a replacement. Yeah. And actually,
I was going to say, boy, could you imagine if Martin turned around?
You were going to say what?
I was going to say, could you imagine if after this, another short turnover line from Marlon, and he took on Jimmy Rivera at the end of December? That's what I was saying, but I think Rivera did get booked. So chances are, if Rivera wins, Rivera probably fights TJ Dillashaw. Now, I think what that could open the possibility of, we could see Marlon Moraes against Cody Garbrandt for a number one contender in 2018. What do you think?
Yeah, so I looked right here. Jimmy Rivera is going to fight John Lineker actually at UFC.
Okay, that's a great. I think if Rivera wins, I think that he's undefeated in the UFC. I think that gives him 5 or 6 wins in a row, and beating Lineker, who I think is a very good bantamweight as well. That, to me, gets himself a title shot. Now, the only wrinkle in this two wrinkles. One, when Dominic Cruz comes back from injury, and 2, if TJ Dillashaw does, in fact, move down to 125 to fight Demetrius Johnson. Those are the only 2 wrinkles I could see kind of holding up the division. And I actually hope, even though TJ, this is his second championship run, I'd like to see TJ get a title defense in before we see him move down. Just so, because we got contenders, especially when it's somebody like a Rivera or a Moraes. Now I could see kind of holding up because he already has fought Cruz. He already obviously just beat Garbrandt. So in favor of those guys, I kind of see winning because those matchups have already happened. But I would like to see if it's Rivera, if it's Moraes, get in there. Let's do one of those first, and then let's have him fight Mighty Mouse. Because Mighty Mouse can kind of sit a little bit because he's already beaten everybody. I don't see like the rush to like give him the next fight, I guess. And also they could give it to Henry Cejudo again too, so it's not like they don't have a fight for Mighty Mouse in his own division.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so first starting with the fight, it was a scary knockout. I think everyone in the MMA world, I think Marlon Moraes himself, you could tell in his acceptance speech, or not acceptance speech, wow. Sorry, I was watching another.
It's award season's coming up.
In his post-fight interview, I felt like he was even a little scared too. So one, I'm just glad that Aljamain Sterling is okay and could laugh off all of the tweets about him doing the dab with his knockout.
Oh, I didn't want to bring that up because I felt bad for him.
I know, but at least he's having fun with it. I mean, the internet goes crazy, but just a huge win for him, like you said, just the hype that was going behind Sterling. And I agree with you. I think it was really nice to see Marlon finally come in. And I completely agree. I think some of these guys come in, and when they've come from other promotions, being champion and having all of this buildup, I'm sure it can put a lot more extra pressure on them to perform and compete well in the UFC. So super exciting to see him kind of coming into his own. And I agree. I think that he is very close to that title shot. I think I want to see one more fight as well. And yes, I think that okay, I'll see you later. Sorry, Dad's stepping in.
Oh, nope.
But I think that with TJ, I understand that there's the business side of it, that the UFC wants to make their money. So if they do that Mighty Mouse fight first, I think that there still are some fights that are exciting, like you're saying with Jimmy Rivera, John Lineker, Marlon Moraes. But I think that, if he can get another big win and performance like that, I think he can give the champ a run for his money for sure.
The co-main event was Gabriel Benitez against Jason Knight, and I think Jason Knight, obviously he got cleared to compete in this, and so I don't think it's anything physical, but I think this was a mental lapse in Jason Knight. I think he's still feeling the after effects of getting knocked out by Ricardo Lamas, because for a guy that was always balls to the wall, in your face, throwing a bunch of strikes, talking trash, getting the crowd up. We didn't see that on Saturday night in Fresno. This looked like a guy that, was kind of gun shy. and not ready for the lights of the UFC. And I'm not trying to take anything from Gabriel Benitez away, but to me, this was more of Jason Knight not performing up to the standards we have seen, more so than Gabriel Benitez just dominating Jason Knight. And I think that maybe he should have taken more time after the Ricardo Lamas fight, because this was not – I think if Jason Knight goes back and looks at this, he'll know that this is not how I fight. This is not how I ever want to fight. And I'm going to maybe have to take some time to get my head straight, because physically he was there. Obviously, like I said, they cleared him the fight. He didn't have any concussions or anything like that. So he was physically all there, but mentally he did not seem like he was in the octagon in Fresno, California. He was somewhere else, and it showed, because it was not a great performance, and Benitez took advantage of that and was able to get the victory.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we don't want to take anything away from Benitez, because sometimes if you can recognize that the fighter is not there, well, great for you to capitalize on that. But I agree with you. I think that I almost kind of feel bad for Jason Knight, because I think sometimes a fighter will come in and perform so well and give us these exciting performances, and fans and commentators in the UFC, we get so excited about this fresh face that's just delivering exciting performances. And maybe it was a little too fast for him, I don't know, to be a co-main event. But I feel like, yeah, it was definitely a mental issue. I thought it was very interesting how in the second round he took off his knee guards.
Yeah, and they did not notice that.
It was just a lot. There's maybe too much overthinking. And again, we've talked about his eagerness, and yeah, there was just, and I think he even tweeted too. He tweeted later this, or a few days after the fight, that he just even felt like something was off. So unfortunately, it just wasn't his night. But it was a little disappointing, because I'm sure plenty of people were just so excited to see him compete again.
Yeah, and I think he's going to take the holidays off. I'm not saying he has to reevaluate his whole career, but just take some time away. Maybe do some like strength and conditioning and stuff, but don't do any like sparring or rolling. Just take some time away from martial arts for the next 3 weeks. Have the holiday season. Enter 2018 kind of with a renewed attitude, and then I would go back to doing the gym if I was Jason Knight. Like, don't even think about fighting for the next like 3-4 weeks, and then come back and start thinking about trying to get another win, because it's crazy to think that this kid was the rising star. Now all of a sudden, if he loses another one, that's 3 losses in a row. Granted, one of those was to Ricardo Lamas on short notice. But all of a sudden, he goes from being the hot prospect in the division to possibly being cut with one more fight. So that's what I'm saying. Take some time off, get some things under you. You have some great coaches around you, like Alan Belcher, guy who's been in the UFC for many years. So he has people around him that can help him out, and I just think he just needs to take a little time right now, and I think he'll be able to get back where he was. Because, like I said, when it's something mental, I feel like that's a lot easier of a fix than when it's something physical, because your body can only do so much, but you can change your mental outlook easier.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions that we're going to get to those in just a minute. I just wanted to finish UFC Fresno before we get to some of so the people that comment. I think Mark commented down below. We're going to get to him in just a minute, so don't think I didn't see you there, Mark. But I want to get to this main event, T-City against Killer Cub. Not only did it win a Performance of the Night bonus for Mr. T-City, it also was the fight of the night. Mm-hmm. Can't go wrong with that. Just an absolute brawl. And I was telling a friend of mine, this is why T-City is so dangerous. I was watching the fight with some friends, and he, in that clinch position, he kind of goes for that high elbow coming around the head, and I go, well, he can't really. I was telling my friend, because obviously now I've been trained jiu-jitsu, I'm seeing these positions a lot more, and so I was like, he can't really finish from there. He's going to have to adjust or get his head lower or jump or something. Exactly what he does. He goes around, jumps, gets it, and then he adjusts even a third time, or I guess a second time, then sinks it up, gets the tap. And see, this is why he is so dangerous, because he takes what's a mundane position, not a great position, with that high elbow kind of against the cage, and turns into submission. That's why he's so dangerous. That's why I think somebody like him could beat Max Holloway, because again, that was not a position where it looks like he's going to finish this. And getting into a clinch is not that hard. Happens all the time in the sport. So for him to take that position and turn his submission against the guy who also is a very good grappler in Cub Swanson, I believe he is a black belt as well under Greg Jackson. So it's not like this, Cub Swanson doesn't know jiu-jitsu or something like that. That's a really high-level move. That's something he brings to the table that other guys in this division do not. And that's what makes him such a tricky matchup. You add in his improving. He's getting better in his stand-up every single fight. You can make a case in this fight, Cub Swanson was getting the better of him. In terms of landed strikes, he was 60-24. But he's competent enough on the feet to get to those 50-50 positions, those clinch positions, those, could go either way positions, that he can come out with a win, and that's exactly what he did on Saturday night.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was, and you're right. I mean, I think if you're Max Holloway, Brian Ortega is the one out of most people in the division that you're going to watch his career and keep watching his fights and start almost preparing for that title shot, because Brian Ortega is definitely on his way to go after that. But I agree. I think it was really cool to see him stand up and trade with Cub as long as he did and really test out his striking, because like you said, it definitely is improving. And I think we had kind of talked about it. It was just a matter, both men are so skilled and well-rounded fighters. Like you said, Cub has his ground game and ground defense as well. But I think it was a matter of who is going to kind of slip up and capitalize on that slip up. And Brian Ortega just did it in, like you said, the fashion that he did it in was just so superior, with his submission attempt. And to see what in the first round, he almost had him in, what was it, a reverse guillotine?
A Darce choke.
He had him in a Darce.
He almost had him in a Darce choke, which was a beautiful setup, by the way.
And it was close.
This guy's jiu-jitsu is incredible.
Yeah, you could say that he was, Cub was saved by the bell. We saw the look on his face. And I mean, what I love, too, is even Cub came out and said, that was a scary guillotine. He said that he was scared.
You saw his face when he turned him over?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, really great performance for Brian Ortega. I'm a little bummed because I really liked Cub's, momentum that he was getting. I still would like to see him get a title shot because I feel like just what he's done for the sport. And, even within that fight, I think he really looked good. It was unfortunate we didn't get to see a little bit more of them compete against each other a little bit further into the rounds. But Brian Ortega is just he's the new exciting prospect.
Now, the only thing I think holding up Brian Ortega getting a title shot is how long Frankie Edgar will be sidelined. Yeah. Now, I was a little disappointed in Frankie Edgar because he was supposed to fight at 218 here in Detroit. Didn't show up to the event. I thought, why wouldn't he come see the event firsthand, knowing he was going to be here? He had already done some promotion in town anyway. But yet, I get it. He was with his training partner, Marlon Moraes. But yet, he somehow was able to make a farther flight from New Jersey to Fresno, California to corner Marlon, but couldn't take the hour-and-a-half flight from New Jersey to Detroit. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. Don't you think that's a little odd? He wasn't at the event in Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, you think that he would have been there, but I don't know what's going on in his personal life.
Does a week difference on a facial fracture mean you can't fly? You know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's not like it was such a big – it's not like 218 was, 2 months ago when he got hurt, and then, now he can fly or something. It was the following week.
Right.
I don't know. That kind of was just like, I was like, really, Frankie? I don't know. That kind of threw me off a little bit. It's not like and the thing is, the UFC probably would have paid for his flight, paid for his hotel, and all. It's not like he would have had to do something out of pocket for that. But I don't. Anyway, that kind of threw me off. All right, let's get to a couple questions here that we've broken down. UFC Fresno. I was going to get the Mark comments first. He says, "What do you think is next for Conor McGregor? Spending money in Ireland is what is next for him." That's what's next. I really don't know what else. Beating up more people in bars, maybe going out on date nights with other models. That's about it, really. I think that's what he has on his mind right now. And maybe Christmas is coming up. He'll probably buy himself another new car, I imagine. So that's why I think is next. I know that sounds like a joke, Mark, but I'm being absolutely serious. I think that's what's next for him right now. I don't think there's any serious plans for him to do any sort of combat sports anytime soon.
I'm going to say that I am thinking he's going to do some self-reflection. I think he's going to get with his family over the holidays. And hopefully, with the self-reflection, he will decide what he wants to do. Does he want to take a break from mixed martial arts and let go of that title and focus on maybe opportunities outside of mixed martial arts? Or hopefully, he'll come back and defend his title early next year.
All right, we got a question from Peter. Overall, has Dana White been good or bad for the UFC? I think it started out very good for the UFC, and I think slowly but surely it's kind of become a little bad. Now, I know this whole Keaton Jones thing, the young kid who was bullied, is kind of now taking a weird twist involving some racism and white supremacy, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I just thought it was ironic that Dana White was coming to this kid's defense, considering he's probably one of the biggest bullies I know. He bullies his fighters, he bullies his employees, and he bullies his own fans online. So that's why I thought it was so ironic that he was being so welcoming to this kid, considering he's one of the biggest bullies that I know. So that's why I'm thinking it's starting to go slightly bad. I know people think it's a joke, but I'm being serious, Kayla. I think he bullies people. I mean, the whole Demetrius Johnson thing, I think really showed him in a different light. The fact that they promised his fighter a fight, then they're saying, no, you have to take this. And Mighty's Mouse is like, well, I'm already prepared to take this fight. And he goes, yeah, I'll fire your whole division. Yeah. Is that's not being a bully, Kayla? I don't know what is. He threatened to fire all those people because Mighty Mouse wouldn't take another fight. So, it's kind of hard for me to have a lot of sympathy for the guy.
Yeah. It's hard for me to discredit or talk badly about someone that really has just built the sport, though, and built UFC, not alone, but he's been a big part of it. So, and I don't know. I mean, I agree. I think sometimes he handles himself, differently than maybe I would have liked him to handle certain things. And I think with that Demetrius Johnson thing, both of them did come out and say that some things were taken out of context. I think there's still some truth to what you're saying about bullying Demetrius into trying to get him into fighting TJ, which is going to happen anyway, so silly. But yeah, I think that at the same time too, though, wearing that hat and being the face that everyone likes to just kind of go after and blame when something goes wrong, that can't be easy either. So I don't know, who knows if sometimes he gets too many mean tweets and he's had a couple drinks and that's why he sends out these bully tweets back. I don't know, but I think overall he's been good for the UFC just because he's been a big part of what's built it into where it is now. I don't really love the way that it's been operating in the last year, but I think that they're recognizing that fans aren't so happy with certain fights that are being made or catering to certain people like Conor McGregor. So I think that we're moving in a better direction in 2018.
All right, let's get to some Bellator news here coming up. So we had Bellator 190 and Bellator Kickboxing 8 this Saturday. Let's do the MMA portion first because that's how it aired. Okay. Let's see. We had honestly, the fights were okay. I will admit I was surprised to see Alejandra Lara defeat Ovinjakova. I thought that was actually a pretty big upset. I thought Ovinjakova, for being the favorite, I don't know if I always consider her a pretty solid grappler, even though she's done some kickboxing and actually does plan on doing some Bellator kickboxing as well as part of her deal. But I thought she could have performed better for a girl I wouldn't say is a huge flyweight. I thought she should have had the better conditioning. I don't know. She just looked a little off. And I'm not trying to, take anything from Lara, but Lara gave some opportunities in this fight that Ovinjanko should have capitalized, being the more experienced fighter, and she didn't. And so that's why it was disappointing to me. It wasn't so much disappointing that she got submitted or that she lost, is that I felt there were opportunities for her to take advantage of, and she didn't. And Laura kind of got away with some of it. And if she does some of those things against, like, an Alima Leigh McFarland, those aren't going to happen. The biggest situation was a situation where she kind of left her arm hanging there, and I thought that was a ripe opportunity for an armbar, and Ovinjakova just kind of didn't do anything with it. And I thought, man, if you gave that to Limier, you would have
Yeah.
tapped right there. You
Yeah.
know, so that's why it was disappointing for me, because I think she is a very talented fighter. But I felt that she kind of underperformed on Saturday night, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to catch most of these fights. I only saw some highlights and read up on them, but I think kind of similar to what you're saying, that's what the majority of what I was reading. And hopefully these ladies can watch their tape and kind of see, where they had their flaws and be able to come back from that.
Yeah, and Laura, I mean, for her, obviously her Bellator debut, I think this was only her 8th professional fight. I don't want to get like too down on her, because she obviously won the fight. She got the finish. That's a big deal in a fight where she wasn't expected to win. So I think that's a big deal. But I'm just saying that, you could tell that she's still raw in her game. There are opportunities she left out there that somebody like an Ovajakoa should have taken advantage of, but didn't. And she was able to have those mistakes and not come back to Hunter, and she got the finish. So still good on her for getting the win in the finish. Then Brandon Gertz. Brandon Gertz does what Brandon Gertz does. I love Brandon Gertz. Huge knockout over Luka Jelic. I'm not going to highlight that one too much. And then in the main event, I'm not surprised at all. Rafael Carvalho absolutely starching Alexio Sakara, a title shot that should have never happened. I also think another reason it happened so quickly, they mentioned, Sakara hadn't cut weight to 185 in quite a number of years. Most of his Bellator fights have been up at light heavyweight. So, you add in that dehydration of the body. He's already like 40 years old, and he took a shot, again, right to the body. It just wasn't going to go well for Alexio Sakara, I think, regardless of the weight class. But let's get Carvalho. I'm telling you, John Slayton deserves a shot at Carvalho. And I actually think John Slayton can take him out. He's training very hard with Derek Brunswick there in North Carolina. He's been beating everybody that he's been taking on so far in Bellator, including former middleweight champion Brandon Halsey. So I think it's time to see Slayton against Carvalho. And Carvalho took no damage in this fight. And Slayton took hardly any damage in his fight a couple weeks ago in Israel. So I think this fight should happen pretty soon, in my opinion. I don't see any barriers to this happening. So I think this should happen really quickly here in the first 3 months of 2018. I think Bellator should get that booked.
Yeah, I had a friend that actually had interviewed him earlier this year, and he was saying that he's been pretty frustrated with just how he's been promoted as a champion, the fights that are set up. What do you think do you think that's a fight that will finally, get attention towards him as a champ? Because he's on a dominant run, so it is interesting that...
I think so, because I think one of the reasons his championship status got hurt is because of how bad he performed in that first Melvin Manhoef fight. I think that really hurt his stock in a lot of people's minds, because that was the fight to put him on the map, to put him as a potential face of Bellator, and it was a complete dud. One of the worst fights ever for a championship in any organization. A complete dud. And so I think that really hurt his stock. Now, he came back, had a good fight the second time with Manhoef, knocking him out. This one absolutely scorched Alessio Sakara, and obviously his fight to win the championship over Halsey was an amazing body kick knockout as well. So the guy has potential, and obviously his last 2 fights have been on tape delay in Italy. That's another reason why I think that's hurt his stock, because Bellator, you got to stop with this tape delay stuff. You're doing it again this weekend. Nobody likes it. Nobody. I haven't heard one person anywhere in the world that's like, oh, I love this tape delay stuff. This is really cool. No one is saying this. Just do the event live. We have DVR. We have online streaming. There's illegal streaming. There's going to be ways to watch this fight after the fact if you can't catch it live. There are ways to do that. Technology exists. We're about to turn to 2018. So don't act like this is 1977, where the only way you can watch a fight or whatever is on TV on the 3 channels you have with your aluminum foil and rabbit ears. Okay? Bellator somehow is stuck in 1978, and I don't get it, Kayla. I really don't. And so Cavalli can talk about promotion. Yeah, that's one side of it, but the other side of it is sticking them on tape delay as well.
Yeah, and I think like you're saying, that's a big factor there. And I want to ask this, once we discuss too Bellator 191, but we have a few people debating, are these Bellator champions I don't want to say, the more skilled, better fighters, but we do have a lot of these ex-UFC fighters coming in and going after titles, and Bellator champions still dominating. And, maybe do we have some kind of hidden gems here that just aren't getting the attention or promotion or live fight, display with their fight. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit with 191, since we have some ex-UFC people making their debut.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that no former UFC fighter has won a Bellator championship, I think does mean something. Now, there's two reasons for that. One, a lot of the people, especially in the past when Bjorn Rebney was running things, those were guys that were cut for the UFC from losses, and maybe guys towards the end of their career. We haven't seen too many guys really come in their prime. I think Roger Huerta, you can make a case, was probably still in his prime, was the first real big signing that Bellator got from the UFC. And obviously Roger Huerta didn't pan out, but that happens sometimes. Now, and obviously we've seen Eddie Alvarez, a former Bellator champion, go on and win a UFC championship, the only fighter in mixed martial arts history to win said championships. I think that's a big deal. So I think now, because of the landscape in the UFC with the Reebok and the sponsorship and people talking about pay, and again, I think dealing with Dana White, we even had current Bellator fighter Rampage Jackson speak out against him many times. And though I guess Rampage is kind of going back and forth, because when there was that whole situation where he came back, he goes, "It's better to dance with the devil you know than the devil you don't know." So, so I think Scott Coker is now, because of that, getting guys in their prime. Yeah. And so I think we're going to start possibly seeing that. But I think the guys at the top, the guys that are matched up at Bellator, are good. It's just that Bellator lacks the depth as a whole division. If you take the 15th best guy in Bellator's welterweight division, he's going to get scorched by the 15th best guy in the UFC's welterweight division. But as you start moving up to the top of the ladder, you go, could Douglas Lima take on Tyron Woodley? You go, that might be an interesting fight. Could Douglas Lima fight a Stephen Thompson? Yes, the guys at the top can compete, but it's that depth. That's what Bellator lacks, and that's why the UFC overall has more talent. But that's why some of these guys that are kind of towards the middle of the pack or towards the end, when they come over, that's why they're given the top guys in Bellator, and that's why they're not succeeding too, is because just because they were in the UFC, I think maybe people over-evaluate how good they actually are.
Right. Very interesting. Well, we'll continue to see. I mean, Bellator picking up more and more, signings. And who do we have fighting next? We have Gegard, I think. Is Gegard getting a title shot or not yet?
I forgot about him in the middleweight division. Honestly, I think John Slayton should get it first, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't think Gegard Mousasi beat Alexander Shlemenko. I didn't think he beat him. And based off of that performance, I don't think that should give him a title shot, because, you could be, his eye was damaged. But his eye was damaged from getting punched in the face, not from an illegal eye poke. That's completely different. So I think actually Gegard underperformed in that fight. And Shlemenko, who, don't get me wrong, is good, obviously, but I thought Gegard was going to just smash Alexander Shlemenko, and he didn't. So I actually would like to see Shlemenko either get a rematch with Gegard or have Mousasi take on somebody else. I would – let's try to think about – not Kendall Grove, because that's someone too low ranked. Let's see. Rory has this fight, though, coming up with Doug.
Rory's the next one.
I was going to say Rory moving up to 85. But, gosh, I'm trying to strict my strut here. I know he might be as close to retirement, but I obviously think Melvin Manhoef against Mousasi would be a heck of a fight.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see how they play these things out. We do have a couple more questions, but I know you want to get through. So, okay, we talked.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to 1 second. I just want to briefly go over Bellator. Yeah, I just briefly want to go over Bellator Kickboxing 8. We saw Gabriel Varga finally get
that after. Sorry to interrupt.
Let me send you a link. I'm gonna send you a link. It has some of the highlights and videos. But so we had Gabriel Varga win. He's a former Glory champion. Got the stoppage. Not surprising. Surprising, though, upset victory Hamza Imani defeating Kevin Ross via split decision. This was a non-title fight for only 3 rounds. Very interesting. So Ross loses, so this probably prompts an immediate rematch for 5 rounds for his featherweight championship. So I think that was very interesting, and he deserved the win. I'm not doubting it, but that very intriguing there. Then John Wei Parr doing his thing once again, getting his 99th professional kickboxing victory.
Wow.
This kid in the 3rd round. This was an absolute shelling of a performance. I actually would like to see. I think they weighed in at like 162 or 163. I'd actually like to see John Wayne Parr, if he could move up those 7 pounds, to take on Raymond Daniels. I think that's the fight to make. Joe Schilling, dominated Philippe Verlinden. Schilling was saying he actually thought he lost that fight, which I thought was surprising. Yeah, he actually said he would rematch for Verlinden, which I think would be good, and I think you could make that for Bellator's middleweight championship, as he once again berates Scott Coker and the management and giving him a Bellator middleweight championship. And I don't know how much longer they can stop Joe Schilling from not fighting for a championship. And then Raymond Daniels does what Raymond Daniels does, absolutely dominates Giannis Bukis there in the main event. Another, again, odd non-title bout, even though Daniels is the champion. So I'd like to see Daniels either rematch Kareem Gaji, or I'd like to see him take on John Wayne Parr next. I think those are the 2 matches to make for Bellator kickboxing.
Anyone watching, if you caught Bellator kickboxing, I'm going to have to check out these highlights that Jim's going to send me, but if you guys want to chime in with that, please feel free.
All right, before we get to 191, we got a question from our friend Steve Brigg. Who will win the Bellator tournament? Is Mitrione the only legit heavyweight? And Mir and Fedor seem past their prime. Everyone else is a light heavyweight. Okay, it's more of a comment. Mitrione the only legit heavyweight? Roy Nelson's still legit? Or is he, you didn't throw him in there with your past his prime. I guess you could kind of throw him as a past his prime, and I think that's a fair assessment. I think Mitrione has I think as far as athleticism, physical tools, he does probably possess the most. But the thing is, people think, oh, he's this young guy and stuff. He's only a couple of years younger than these guys. Yeah. So it's not like he's super. It's just the fact he doesn't have the wear and tear of 30, 40 fights on his resume.
Like these other guys.
That's the only difference. And I'm going to stand by this, Steve. I said this a couple months ago and now. I actually think Justin Wren's going to win the heavyweight tournament. He's going to be injury replacement.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
I'm staying by that because somebody's going to get hurt. It's going to happen.
Well, if we're talking about the guys that just are in the tournament, I favor Mitrione, like I think a lot of people do. But I think that, I don't know if I want to say that Roy's past his prime. I think that he actually performed I enjoyed his performance. I thought he looked good against Javi. And I think, with Frank Mir, yes, he's been out for a little bit, but he's been actively training, actively still within the MMA community, doing his commentating, working on his fight IQ, what have you, that I think let's see what he's got. Maybe he still has it to possibly win the tournament and defend it a few times. But yeah, it is a little interesting, the choices that were made. But I think we talked about this last week. This looks like it's more of a fun event to kind of bring in these big names and bring attention to this division. And then I'm sure the real light heavyweights, or the ones that are naturally in that division, will kind of go in there and start competing against the champion that we get. It's supposed to be done by 2018, right?
Yeah, so it's going to start in January with Rampage against Chael Sonnen, and then it's going to end in December. So it's going to take a whole year to compete.
A whole year, yeah.
That's why I think somebody's going to get hurt, because they're allowing too much time.
Right.
That's just me. I think really if Frank Mir stays away from the kangaroo meat, I think he'll be just fine, really. That's why he got his last drug test. That's what he claimed.
I love you today. You're being I love the bluntness that we're getting out of Jim today. It's very entertaining.
I'm trying to be, because that's one thing when people do sports talk, you got to have an opinion and you got to stick to it. You can't be like, well, this and that. You can't bring up every single option. Then your point gets diluted. So I'm trying to stay on a point and sticking to it as best as I can.
Well, I'm enjoying.
So we're getting to Bellator 191. We have a lot of fans that watch in the UK. So You get a great card, and also you get like a Bama half card too. So I think that's like a really cool thing that Bellator does. But again, as I hammered them earlier, I'm going to hammer again. Tape delay is dumb. Nobody likes it. Just show it live. If you want to show it replay later on in the evening at the time you deem appropriate, go for it. But other than that, not needed. Okay, let's get to the fights here. The two fights people are talking about, obviously, Michael McDonald and Valerie Turno. Two Canadians making their Bellator debut. Two big signings for Bellator. Both look to factor in their respective divisions very quickly. Letourneau, even though she's 8-6, I would say is a pretty skilled individual, especially considering she's competed really big at 115 pounds. I think she's probably more suited for the 125, not having to cut those 10 less pounds. And I don't think they're giving her somebody bad. They're giving her someone pretty good, someone that I think the winner of this fight probably faces Alimier. I don't think that's a stretch. Kate Jackson's 9-2 in her career with a draw. 5 of those 9 victories are by knockout. She has not lost since 2013, which was to Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Right.
Not a bad loss. Since then has won 5 out of her last 6 fights, including that draw, and 5 in a row, including a win over a very good fighter in Colleen Schneider. So I think Kate Jackson is a very legit individual. And so I think if Kate Jackson wins, I think she fights Alimier. And conversely, if Valerie Turno, obviously a big signing, that's the thing. They want to get her into the title shot, and they're not giving it, just handing it to her. They're having her face someone I would consider pretty legit. And despite losing 3 in a row, she still brings a lot. Obviously, she lost to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanne Calderwood, and I really think her last fight was the only one of the 3 you can really go, she didn't perform really well. She probably should have beat Viviane Pereira. I think she probably should have won that one. The other 2, the Calderwood fight was actually really close. She just kind of got caught with that body kick there from Joanne. So I think that this is a big fight, not just for the division, but I think it's a big fight because if Letourneau loses again, now has 4 in a row, even though it's her first Bellator fight, that all of a sudden doesn't look as good of a signing, and it looks as though the UFC knows what they were doing and letting her go. So this is a really big fight for Letourneau. I really think she needs a win here, and she's going to take on a very tough customer in the process. The biggest difference I'm seeing, even though they're both fighting at 125, I think Letourneau is going to be the bigger 125er. And so I think that's what could potentially be the X factor, especially in those 50-50 clinch positions where a lot more strength is used. So I think that's the X factor to look out for in this one, Kayla.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, like you said, that the size she's going to have an advantage with the size and almost this do or die fight mentality. Because, like you said, she's realizing she's getting a chance to compete in Bellator and has her name that she's pulling with her, like we were saying, with these UFC fighters crossing over and getting not an immediate title shot, but in the title talk. So, but yeah, like you're saying, I'm really excited. The more that I read on Kate Jackson, I don't think it's going to be an easy fight either. I mean, all the statistics you were just talking about, her last loss in 2013, the way that she's been winning her fights, this has me really excited. And this is what I was talking about. The flyweight division in Bellator and UFC just has so many really talented ladies that I think we're going to see them fighting in their prime and deliver great performances. So we'll see what happens. I don't know why, though. My gut's telling me that Kate Jackson might pull out a win. Sorry, Valerie.
I think so. I think that's very prime for an upset. Getting to the main event, Michael McDonald, a guy that has already fought for a UFC championship, is 17-4. Only 26. He's younger than me. Actually, it says, I don't know how far you are from Modesto, Kayla, but not that far. I think that's in Southern California, right?
Where is it? Where did you say?
Modesto.
Modesto.
I don't know what that's like.
I'll have to look that up.
I mean, regionally, it's close to you, but I mean,
like, it's in my neighborhood.
But that's not saying much in California. But like I said, 26 years old. He has 15 finishes of 17 victories, only 4 losses, and those are coming to 3 of them: Henan Barao, Uriah Faber, and John Lineker. His other one was actually to a guy not that bad either, in Cole Escovedo. So this is a guy who's been competing since 2007. That he was like 17 with his first fight.
Oh,
That's
cool.
insane. So, I'm not sure if that's legal, and it might have been in Canada or something, or an Indian reservation or something. I think you got to be, but So he's been fighting. He's been fighting for 10 years, and he's only 26 years old. Is insane. Obviously, his last fight, he got knocked out by John Lineker, which kind of no shame in that. I think we're going to see Michael McDonald. Obviously he got hurt after his Uriah Faber fight. He had 3 years away from the sport. He's 1-1 since returning. I think he took the opportunity to get more sponsors and more money, because I think this is the guy that the UFC, I think, legitimately would have liked to keep. I don't think it was a cutting situation. So I think Bellator gets a chance for a guy to really make a big run here at 26. I think he's learned a lot. And all his injuries, I remember interviewing him after his first fight back in the UFC, were all like hand-related. They weren't like big, major like knee injuries or something like that. So it's not like it's something that affects him planting and moving around and grappling. He kind of was saying it was just kind of like my hand kept on getting injured. And so obviously you're punching. So it's something that I guess you can kind of look out for, but I don't think it's something that really affects his ability all that, because he was able to stay in shape. If your hand's broken, you can still run on the treadmill. You can still lift some weight. You can still do a lot of stuff even though you have a broken hand. So I think he's primed for a big run here, and I'm really excited to see him take on guys like Eduardo Dantes and Darian Caldwell, because I think he's a tremendous matchup. And I'm not saying he's taking on a complete nobody, but he kind of is. This guy's 31 years old. His opponent, Peter Liger, if I said that correctly, coming out of France, 8-1 his career, 5 finished victories out of the 8. Also has a draw to his credit. Has never fought in Bellator, and he gets the main event in his first spot. He has won 4 out of his last 5 fights, one of those being a draw. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he has a chance. It's an MMA fight, but this, compared to his fellow country person in Valerie Turno, this to me is a much easier matchup than what Valerie has to deal with. And I think this is setting up Michael McDonald to fight for the championship even better than Valerie. I really think that's what they're pushing for. And I really think this is Michael's fight to lose, if I'm being honest. He should win on Friday night in England.
Yeah, I think everything that you were just saying, Bellator sees that they have a huge star, a possible star in Michael McDonald. And I really, I like his story. I like that he's fought from such a young age, that he took a break, going from 17 and now being 26, just the whole growing up process that you go through on a personal level, not even as an athlete. I think it's really cool that he took a little bit of a break and now is coming back and saying he feels stronger than ever, is mature and has this mindset of, I have an opportunity here to come in to Bellator, get a main event, and possibly go after that title. And I had read, I don't think that he was let go from the UFC. I think it was a matter of them both kind of discussing that, what he was trying to negotiate and what they were trying to negotiate just wasn't going to work out. And he saw potential to come over to Bellator and shine there. So I'm really, really excited to see him perform. I feel like I was reading something about Peter, his opponent last night. I mean, he hasn't lost since 2014, and I would hope that Bellator wouldn't put, a complete one-sided fight for Michael McDonald's debut, but who knows? It might be that they are just trying to build up this star. But I hope that we at least get an exciting back and forth bout, just so we can see both men's skills.
All right, real quickly before we get to UFC Winnipeg, I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention Glory 49 / Glory.
I'm excited to talk about this. More and more excited to talk about Glory.
I love Glory. Very good performance and win by Mr. Alex Pahea, as he was able to get by a guy who I think is an absolute monster in Belgari, and he was able to beat him in the 3rd round. There was a doctor stoppage. Very competitive fight looking over the numbers. I wouldn't doubt it because of that doctor stoppage if we see a rematch. But Pahea is a guy that's really rose to the occasion. I think he's really performed well from winning a tournament to now obviously beating Simon Marcus to now beating Belgari. I'm really looking forward. I think him against Jason Wilness is obviously out there. You have Justin Jacoby and Chris Camozzi coming after him too. A rematch with Belgari. The middleweight division, which I think was kind of down, especially when, they got rid of Arten Levin and Joe Schilling, with those guys leaving, there was kind of a little bit of the middleweight division looks pretty weak. But now Pereira and Belgari, and like I said, now the addition of Chris Camuzzi, this division is starting to get back to where it was, being the best division in Glory Kickboxing, and it's starting to get that way. And I'm really excited for the future of this division. And Alex Pereira is definitely a guy that brings it. I mean, if you look at the total striking numbers, 86 of 159 landed for Pereira, 90 of 153 for Belgari. So this was a super close fight. And Belgari, I think, is like 22 or 23 years old. He's incredible.
Exciting.
So he's going to be back as well. Super excited for that. So that was on the Super Fight series, which is on UFC Fight Pass. So if you missed it, you get a chance to watch it. You also get to see former champion Nikki Holtzkin, former tournament winner Ismail Lant, and then the Glory 49 main card. There was a lightweight tournament. That one was kind of not as star-studded as kind of that was kind of like the middle part. Not as star-studded as the Super Fight series and obviously the pay-per-view. But getting to the pay-per-view, Kayla, obviously Rico Verhoeven wins again. What do you think is next for Rico Verhoeven? Because he once again beats another guy in the heavyweight division, and he gets another finish. He is continuing to being unstoppable. So what do you think is next for Rico?
Yeah, so what now? He's on 14 straight wins, and from what I watched in the fight and heard in commentary, that was a rematch, right?
Yes, they, I think, had fought before they were in Glory, and Jamal Sadiq beat him. And so this is now 1-1. And the fact the knockout happened in the 5th round could be potential for a rematch. Now, this leads to my next point. Huge news for Glory. They signed Badr Hari for a multi-fight deal kicking off in March in, I think that's Rotterdam. Or where did it? Hang on, let me go back to the Glory main page. It's on the front page. Yes. They'll go back to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. They're already announcing the pre-sale coming up soon for Glory 51. Badr is back. Haven't announced an opponent. I think the fact that it's not going to be on pay-per-view makes me think it's not Rico. But I think Rico Badr 2 will happen. And I also do think Jamal Ben Sadiq against Rico will happen again. I actually think Badr should take on Benjamin Ajabuji. That's who I think he should take on. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. They may try to bring some other, I hate to say freak show, but they may bring something like a Bigfoot, something crazy to take on Badr, which I think is a possibility. I even think there's an outside chance the UFC would allow Alistair Overeem to go back to Glory to take on Badr, as both these guys have knocked out each other. I think that's also an outside possibility as well.
So that's what I wanted to ask you, because I'm still getting familiar with Glory, and I had noticed everyone freaked out about Badr. So can you give me a quick little history lesson? Why are people so excited for him to?
He's arguably the greatest kickboxer of all time. I think his record's 106-5 or something ridiculous like that. He's won multiple K1 kickboxing. He's beaten the likes of, you name it, in kickboxing back in K1, the mid-2000s. He beat Alistair Overeem, Mirko Krokop, Mark Hunt, those type of tournaments, Slemmy Schilt, those type of guys. Remy Boyansky, guys like that. He's beaten them, and he's done it at the highest stage, and he's knocked them out too. Also, his outside the ring antics. He's got a lot of trouble with the law. That's why they call him the bad boy kickboxing. So he's always been a very polarizing figure in the world of kickboxing. And the thing is, he's only 33 years old, maybe 34, so he's not super old, and really 111 kickboxing bout. And when you compare that to MMA, you think whoa, that's ridiculous. But in kickboxing, not really that much. Senchai, I think, has 500 kickboxing bouts or some ridiculous amount, the legend out of Thailand. So when you kind of compare that, you think, well, okay, that's not that much then. But I think this is a big deal, because when he came back, it was out of retirement, I think after 18 months to take on Rico. and it was thought of just kind of as a one-time thing. Then, of course, he kind of broke his arm in the fight against Rico. So a lot of people thought, well, maybe he's done. Maybe he just comes back to challenge Rico to make it like a real fight. But now that it's a multi-fight deal, Rico is an inevitability. It's just a matter of when they want to do it, and it will be on pay-per-view. I think there's no question about that. But the fact that they haven't named his opponent kind of makes me think they're going to try for something else outside of the realm of glory before they kind of look within. That's my thoughts.
His big return fight.
Exactly. Because they could get somebody like a Mirko Cro Cop.
That would be huge.
You know, like Mirko has competed in glory before. Obviously, I think he's fighting in Risen coming up in a few weeks. Even though he said he was retired, he's coming back. So I think there's a possibility, and I think this is a fight Mirko would take.
Right. Yeah, well, I think, like you're saying, the fact that they haven't announced it, they're definitely weighing out options. And what I like, too, is, I mean, again, I'm getting very familiar with glory, so people watching too, if you're Glory fans, please feel free to comment and educate me a little bit too with Jim. But after seeing Rico perform and the fact that he, you know, was able to have this rematch and win in the style that he did, I think that's what's always exciting when you see these champions where now they're in their prime. They're taking out guys who have beaten them in the past. So if him and you know, Badir can have an exciting rematch, I think that's one that I'll definitely tune into. I'm starting to become a big fan.
Absolutely. I'm super excited for the 2018 Glory. And hopefully they come to Detroit. They haven't been to Detroit yet. John Franklin is a Detroit guy. Hoping they come to Detroit. Unfortunately, they their next event in Chicago, they announced for the same weekend as a big fight going on here in Detroit, Warrior Extreme Cage Fighting. Same weekend, our biggest promotion in Michigan I help out with. Daquan Townsend against Muhammad Abdullah for the interim middleweight championship. The winner to face Joe Riggs, who is the WXC middleweight champion. So just want to announce that was announced out. So for any fans near the Detroit area, that's a big fight coming that weekend, February as well. So looking forward to that matchup. Let's do it then. Let's get to UFC Winnipeg.
Okay.
Kayla. So we're going to pick the main card, but first there are 8 undercard fights. If you can narrow it down to one, which undercard fight are you looking forward to the most?
Okay, let me pull this up really quickly.
I'll give mine first real quick then. I think for me, I was thinking Eric Silva against Jordan Meehan, because I think from an exciting factor, that's going to be super entertaining. But I think ranking-wise, and I also think entertaining-wise, I'm going to go with the highlighted prelim on FS1. I'm going to go with Jared Cannonier against Jan Blachowicz. I think Jared Cannonier is he's a guy that brings it. He's very exciting, very heavy-handed, very aggressive. And then you have Blachowicz, who, despite having a pretty good grappling background, I think more than times than not in his UFC tenure has really just wanted to stand and bang. So I think we're going to get a very good fight here. And also, this is a big test for Cannonier. I think this is the best guy he will have taken on so far in his UFC tenure at 205 pounds. So I think this is a test to see if Cannonier is legit, or if he, as he has alluded to, even dropping down another division to 185, or if he gets by Blachowicz, he starts to become a real threat in the 205 division. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup there on the FS1 prelims.
Yeah, I know that there was some hype building up behind that fight, and then also the Laprise and Buffando, because I think Buffando, he's coming off of an exciting finish, right?
Yeah, he's coming off the shove finish, where he kind of like shoved that guy down to the ground and then like punched him in the the guy's head like bounced off after he threw him down, and then he followed up. So it was kind of a knockout by push, which I've never seen before. So yeah, this guy, and I think it was for the UK fans watching, I think it was on that Scotland card against a UK guy. So a lot of people, not only was the finish kind of like, what? It was against one of their guys, and everyone was like, did that just happen? You just showed a guy with like a knockout? So yeah, that's a good one too.
There's some hype behind that one, just to see, I guess, how he competes next. And then I'm a Tim Elliott fan. I really enjoy watching him, especially after the show, after his performance against the champion with Demetrius Johnson. So I'm looking forward to seeing him compete again. But yeah, I would say probably my computer's kind of giving me some issues, but I know that that was one that I wanted to discuss was Buffando. I'm excited to see him perform again because I think he has a little bit of hype behind him.
Let's get to the main card, starting with the light heavyweight division. Glover Teixeira against Misha Cirkunov. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. You have two guys that are both very strong, heavy hitters. Both have some grappling game as well, very well-rounded. Of course, Cirkunov trying to come back after getting knocked out by Volkan Ozdemir.
Yeah.
And Glover Teixeira, you could tell, is starting to get on the downside of his career. He's had a couple of bad knockout losses, including getting absolutely demolished by Alexander Gustafsson not too long ago. And while, yes, he is currently ranked number 3, I'm not sure if he's still competing at that level that he was, when he got that title shot. I think it was UFC 152. So, yeah, he's still dangerous. You still got to watch out for him. But he doesn't take the hits as well as he did. When he first came up, I called this guy the Terminator because he would just keep coming at the same pace, eating hits and throwing them out. But now Terminator's kind of gotten old a little bit. His parts are starting to get a little rusty. And yeah, he's still dangerous, but not quite the same guy that he was. And even though Cirkunov got scorched, everyone so far has gotten scorched by Volkan Ozdemir. So I don't think that looks as bad. But I think Cirkunov still has a lot of talent. He's young, he's hungry, and I think he wants to erase that loss and make a statement. And Glover Teixeira opening fight of a Fox card is the perfect way to reinsert yourself in the light heavyweight division. The division that right now is not very deep. So getting a win, automatically Cirkunov is right back in looking at, maybe Misha Cirkunov can fight for the title. So just one win, he's right back into it.
Well, it's so good that you said that because that was one thing that I had read is both men actually, Glover Teixeira is actually, he spoke up saying it, I think, more than Misha, that he sees this as an opportunity because the division is so confusing right now with what's going on, that they think if they can perform well and get a big win over each other, that they definitely can put their name in talks with a title shot because of what's going on with the division. And I agree with you. I think that Glover is definitely getting older and slowing down a little bit. But I think that we also have to recognize that Alexander Gustafsson just looked so awesome in that last fight. And I think the fact that he lasted all 5 rounds just is a testament to his durability and, like you said, just toughness. But and then, I like that you brought up, too, that Misha is coming off of the loss to Volkan Ozdemir. Obviously, Volkan was just kind of running through shop, and a few people had to, unfortunately, be the punching bags for him to get to that title shot. But I think that I'm favoring Misha just because, like you said, I think he's a little bit more of the, I don't want to say younger guy, but I guess just has taken less damage, and I'm favoring him for that reason. But I think it's going to be a good fight because both guys are looking to get that title shot and at least perform well to give us an exciting fight.
All right, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Michigan's own Platinum Mike Perry. Super excited for this bout. This may be one of the least technical UFC fights that you see in 2017. This is definitely a throwback fight. I think this is harkened to, I'm going to compare it to like when Vitor Belfort took on Tank Abbott. I think this is a throwback. These are just two dudes that are going to meet in the center of the cage and are just going to absolutely swing and try to knock each other's head off and send it into the Rocky Mountains there in Manitoba. That's what's going to happen. Anything else, I think, would not only be crazy, I also just think is just not going to happen. That's what we're going to get. It's really just whose head is going to stay on their shoulders longer. And I don't think this definitely doesn't go into the 3rd round. I think it probably actually ends in the 1st. I think both these guys have too much power and throw too hard for it to go any longer than 5 minutes.
What makes you think that they're going to just stand up and bang? You don't think that Santiago, he has, I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You don't think he'll try to take it to the ground? He's trying to put on
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but I just think that he wanted this fight. Mike Perry wanted this fight.
Okay.
I really just think that's what it is, and I'm super looking forward to it. You know, Mike Perry's not ranked in the top 15. Ponzinibbio is ranked number 10, coming off the heels of that win over Gunnar Nelson. Regardless of what you thought of what happened in that fight with eye pokes and stuff, he got by Gunnar Nelson. We have to move on. The eye pokes kind of things were unfortunate, but he got the job done. And so now here comes in Mike Perry, and it's unfortunate this fight couldn't be in Detroit, but hopefully he will fight in Detroit very soon. I think this is, if Mike Perry hasn't already had a coming out party, this is it right here. I think this is what puts him into the top 15, and I think this was what really gets him noticed against other top contenders. And I just think he's an interesting guy. I mean, the dude has a face tattoo, for God's sake. So he's a very interesting fellow. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he competes. And, I mean, my dream matchup as far as trash talking would be him against Colby Covington, if that's how can come to fruition. But, yeah. I'm excited for this, but I don't know. What do you think is going to happen, Kayla?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of both guys. I was watching Road to the Octagon, and like you said, Mike Perry's just a very interesting guy, but very, like, I almost want to say he has like this Bruce Lee mentality of just being very zen and all about the mixed martial arts life, but then he can turn on this like crazy trash talking powerhouse. But he seems like, you know, when we talk about the mental game, he seems like he's mentally there. He has a plan. He, like you said, he's not currently ranked, but he knows that he's going after a ranked guy and kind of wants to steal that slot. But then I also was watching, you know, Santiago's portion of it, and he's a tough dude. He was talking about how I think back in Brazil when he was fighting, he broke his arm during a fight in the first round and continued to fight on to the third round and win. So these guys are tough. So yeah, I mean, if they're going to stand in there and bang, I love that. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Santiago's jiu-jitsu, but if we can get a stand-up bang show, I think that these guys are going to deliver if the main event doesn't do it.
Yeah, of his 3 losses, he has been knocked out twice, but he hasn't been knocked out since 2015, which was a fight against Lorenz Larkin. And since then, Ponzinibbio has won 5 straight fights with 3 knockout finishes.
Okay, so to go in there and trade.
So, super looking forward to that. So he's definitely has a lot of momentum here against him, and I think should be the favorite. I think just based on that track record. But if I was betting, I'd put some money on Mike Perry. I don't think that's a bad bet. Next fight, Ricardo Lamas against Josh Emmett. Obviously, originally, Lamas was supposed to rematch Jose Aldo. Obviously, Aldo moved up for another chance at the belt. That didn't work out for him. But now Josh Emmett comes in, his opportunity to make a name for himself. Emmett's a solid competitor, 12-1 so far in his career. But I'm not quite sure if he's ready for someone the level of Ricardo Lamas. So far in the UFC, he has a record of 3-1. He actually has a win up a weight class over Scott Holtzman, which I think is a pretty big deal. Does have a split decision loss to Desmond Green, and did win his last fight back in October against Felipe Arantes, which, if I remember correctly, he dominated Arantes. So I think while, yes, he is a guy that is an up-and-comer in the division, he's training with a very good camp in Team Alpha Male. I'm not quite sure if he's ready for Ricardo Lamas. Now, because Lamas is a guy that typically his nickname's the bully, he likes to kind of get in close, likes to kind of ground and pound people. I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a completely, like, Lamas is going to wipe the floor, but I think Lamas will be able to do enough to get the victory. I know I was giving away my pick, but I feel like he's just going to be a little better than Emmett. That's kind of my feeling.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that both men have that wrestling background, and that might have been, in favor with Josh Emmett with his previous opponents. But I think with Ricardo Lamas, just because they both obviously have that power, I think that his experience of fighting longer and fighting, more top-ranked guys is going to, I agree, almost like pull out an edge on the win. But it should be cool. I mean, I think that we're going to see both men compete against, equally tough opponents.
What I will say, though, I think if this stays standing, that gives Emmett his opportunity to win this fight the longer it stays on the feet. But as long as Lamas does what he normally does, he should be able to get the victory. But if he wants to, prove his stand-up or something like that, I think that opens the door for someone like Emmett to possibly steal a decision victory.
And I don't think you want to stand up with Emmett if he's training with the guys at Team Alpha Male.
Yeah, probably not. And I also think Lamas has never had that great a stand-up anyway. He has good power, but not necessarily great stand-up. Let's get to the main event. The winner probably getting a title shot in the welterweight division is former welterweight champion Robbie Lawler takes on former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos. Now, conscious belief would be the smaller guy shouldn't be able to take down the bigger guy. But so far in his 2 welterweight fights, Rafael dos Anjos has made the size disadvantage look irrelevant, especially in his last fight when he took on the monster of a man that is Neil Magny at 6'3", taking him right down, passing, and getting a submission like that.
Yeah.
Now, Robbie Lawler comes from the Miletich camp. If Robbie Lawler is anything, he is a very tough guy to take down, has always been a tough guy to take down in his career. Now, if he is able to get the fight to the ground, no doubt Rafael dos Anjos has way better jiu-jitsu than Robbie Lawler and has an absolute supreme opportunity of submitting the former welterweight champion. However, we're talking about a guy that is a very big welterweight, very strong, very powerful, and another guy that is just a savage. I mean, Robbie Lawler loves to punch people in the face and loves to get punched in the face. This dude is an absolute savage. And so when you add in that factor, that makes this fight just so entertaining because I don't know if Rafael dos Anjos is a savage guy. I've never considered him that. He's a guy that has finished people, has put people away. I'm never a guy that was like, oh, man, this guy's killer instinct or anything like that. And sometimes Robbie Lawler, I think, has won fights based on him being savage.
Yeah.
I know that's not like a huge technical breakdown, Caleb, but I think that's the X factor in this fight is the savageness of Robbie Lawler. And if he unleashes full beast mode, savage modes, I don't think there's anybody in the world that can do anything about it. Including Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah, I've just kind of enjoyed both men's journeys here so far, and with RDA changing into this new weight division, like you said, he's pulled out dominant performances, and I think that's why he's getting a ranked guy like Robbie Lawler. And what is Robbie, number 2, number 3?
Robbie is 2, dos Anjos is 4.
Yeah, so to get this fight and get a possible title eliminator is just really exciting to see RDA come and do that. And I think, like you said, there's just so many different ways the fight could go. If RDA does find a way to get him to the ground and dominate, that's exciting. If Robbie Lawler ends up getting him to stand up and bang with him, maybe even pulling out the savage that we've never seen in RDA. I mean, there's a lot of exciting factors into this, and it's just against these are 2 opponents that have been champions themselves and have just been around the sport for so long and have so many factors to their game. So it's a very exciting fight. I think again this is another card that's a little bit of a sleeper. We have, like you said, in the prelims some exciting matchups, but this main card is going to be really fun.
All right, let's get to the picks here for the main card. UFC on Fox Winnipeg this Saturday, December 16th. First fight of the evening, light heavyweight division, Glover Teixeira against Misha Cirkunov. I'm going with Misha Cirkunov in this one. I think he's going to be hungry for a win, and I think Glover, the physical tools are not quite what they used to be, and I think a young, up-and-coming guy like Cirkunov is going to be able to take advantage of that and get the victory for the first fight of the evening.
I agree. I think Misha Cirkunov is going to get a finish, I want to say, in the early third. I think both men are going to be looking for that finish, looking to, make a statement so they can get that title shot. But I agree. I think that Misha, just with being a little bit of the younger guy and taking less damage, is going to pull that off.
Mike Perry against Santiago Ponzinibbio in the welterweight division. I'm going Mike Perry. I always pull for Mike Perry, being a Michigan guy, especially coming from Flint, Michigan. Obviously an area that has been hit very hard. and really about the last 10 years with the auto recession and the whole water thing, which is still not like fixed yet. It's still blowing my mind that people just about 90 minutes north of me are having problems like that. So I know he trains in Florida now, but very excited for Mike Perry, and I think that he's going to be able to withstand the onslaught long enough to get his shots off and get himself into the top 15.
I really, really want to see this fight go between both men, standing up and banging it out, and Mike Perry get that win. But I don't know why. I have a feeling that Santiago's going to take it to the ground and look for a finish there.
Okay. So you're going Santiago, though?
I am. I have this gut feeling. I hope that it's not an Aljamain Sterling pick, and I'll regret it next week.
All right. Well, if you lose, you won't be allowed in Michigan for at least a year. So.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding. Let's get to Ricardo Lamas against Josh Emmett. Kind of both gave our picks a little bit. I think we're both going Lamas, right?
We are, yeah. Experience.
Yeah. No offense to Josh Emmett, though. I think Josh Emmett is an up-and-coming guy, even though he's 32. The fact he just changed weight classes, I think he does have some potential. Has a great record at 12-1 and a good camp with him as well. So let's get to that main event. Robbie Lawler against Rafael dos Anjos. This is actually a very tough fight for me to pick because I think dos Anjos has done very well moving up. He obviously is the better jiu-jitsu guy, and obviously, even though Robbie Lawler over the years has had great conditioning, you got to believe not cutting that much weight has to give kind of a slight edge to Rafael dos Anjos if this thing goes 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think for the first time, this is a guy that will really actually be able to utilize his size and power and strike advantage over Rafael dos Anjos. And so that's why I think Robbie Lawler is going to get the job done and puts himself, I think, in a very good chance to recapture the welterweight championship.
I agree. I think that RDA, as well as he's done with the division, I think facing someone like Robbie Lawler in these, top three, top two guys, I think that, he's just gonna realize that the size and just like you're saying, the savageness of Robbie Lawler. That I don't want to say that he's not able to eventually face the champ and do well in this division, but I think that Robbie Lawler is just going to have that edge and has the title on his mind as well. So I'm pulling for Robbie. I think just standing up and banging it out and not letting RDA take him down.
All right, that's it for Beyond the Cage this week. She is Kayla Beatty. You can follow her on Twitter at fangirl_MMA. You can also obviously like MMA World on Facebook as well as our sister page, MMA UK. Like that page. We're on Twitter as well at MMA World with an extra D, and then we are We Are MMA UK as well for the Twitter handles, and my personal Twitter handle is just my name at Jim Graham. Any other final thoughts, Caleb, as we had the broadcast here?
No, just that I've enjoyed. Thank you, everyone, for commenting, viewing. We're going to be back again next week to discuss these fights and the other fights going on over the weekend. Jim, it was so nice to talk to you once again. And have fun watching the fights this weekend.
Absolutely, you too. And for Kayla Beatty, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for watching another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast.